Okay, so let's get started. And I'm Cheryl, and I
Hi,
teach
Cheryl.
the computer classes at the main library, or I taught, and they're all now Zoom. So it's a little bit different. We start this class with how to turn the computer on. Um, on this one, I assume you know absolutely nothing. So on your computer somewhere, there is a power button, which you probably know and you've already seen it. It's a circle with a line in it. That's the
Mhm.
computer symbol for power. You push that button to turn it on. That is not the button you should push to turn it off. When you turn the computer off, it needs to go through a series of checks to make sure everything shuts down or everything's okay and no errors before it shuts down. And if
Okay.
you just push the button, it doesn't do that. And Windows doesn't like that. So at the end of the class, or sometime in the class, I'm going to go over how to properly shut down the computer when we get to what we call the start button on your desktop. All right, so that is how you turn the computer on. Now, turning the computer on is called booting. Yes, they have terminology for simple words. They couldn't just say start, they had to say boot. So if anybody says boot your computer up, they mean turn it on, start it. If they say reboot your computer, they mean restart. And this is important
Okay.
because if you have to call like the tech people to fix your computer, they will first of all ask you a couple of questions. One, they will ask you, did you try to reboot your computer? Because frequently when something happens and it gets stuck, turning it off and turning it back on can fix the problem. So they will first ask you, did you try rebooting? And so you'll know what they mean because you now know the word boot. They will also ask you if you have what we call a desktop setup, which is when the parts are held together with cables. They will ask you, did you check all the cables to make sure the cables are all plugged in, because they have a tendency to wiggle loose sometimes. So that's the two questions they'll ask you. Did you check your cables, and did you try rebooting your computer? If you do those two things, um, then you can go on to actually finding out what the actual problem is. Now, obviously, the cable part won't be applicable if you're using a laptop because you don't have cables. That's only for the kind we call desktop, which is the kind held together with cables.
Okay.
Now, when you save stuff on your computer, if you have a desktop set up with the cables, everything, and I'm going to move my camera, everything is stored in the box. This is the actual computer. The monitor and the keyboard and stuff, those you can switch out and it won't change anything on your computer at all. So all the information is actually stored in that box of the computer. Inside there, they call that the hard drive. A drive is a place where you can store information. Okay. So they'll call that the hard drive, basically because it's a hard disk inside there. Um, they also will sometimes, you might hear techie people call it a C drive. All the different places where you can store the save information, the drives, all have letters. And what letters your computer uses is based on what you have hooked up to your computer. Now, A used to be those square floppy disks, which we don't use anymore. B,
Right.
honestly, I've never seen B used. It obviously used to be used, and maybe it's used in servers, which are bigger computers, but it's not used on what we call personal computers, which is what you're using. So C is the one you'll always see. That's always going to be the actual storage inside your computer is going to be the C drive. Now, the letters after that will change depending on what you've got in your computer. If you have a CD or DVD drive, then that is usually labeled with the letter D. Sometimes I've seen it with E, but usually it's D. Your computer just gives it the next available letter. If you have something called a flash drive, which let me grab one. This is called a flash drive. Some people call it a thumb drive because it's about the same size as your thumb. If you plug this in, this plugs into a rectangular hole in the front of your computer. If you have a laptop, it'll plug in the side. And you don't have to worry about which way it goes because it's only one way. And when you plug this in, it will give it a letter automatically. And we're going to deal more with this when we come to Friday's class, if you're going to do that one, and that's files and folders. Now, Friday's class is how to use a software, an app called the File Manager that lets you organize and move around your things on your computer, because all of your information that you store and save on your computer, everything is in files. They call them files, every little thing. Because when they started creating desktop computers or small computers, before that it was just the big room ones, but when they started developing the small ones, they were expensive, and so they marketed them to offices. And organizing information, most people think of files and filing folders and cabinets. So that's what they called the information on the computer, so that it was an extension of what they already the terminology they already kind of used. So all the things on your computer are stored as files, and these files can be organized into folders. And you get to those with using your File Manager software, and that's what we're going to go over on Friday. So we're not going to hit on that today. But if you think about your computer, a lot of the terminology that we use in Windows and desktop computers, personal computers, is all based on the offices. So you have files and folders. You have the recycle bin is where you throw it away. We have the desktop, and in a few minutes I'm going to share my screen with you so I can point out what my desktop looks like and point out this parts and and what they're called, things like that. The desktop is that first screen you see, and I'm going to share my screen. This is the desktop. Now I've put a fancy picture on mine. The desktop is where you first see everything laid out. Now, just like the desktop in your office, not everything on your computer is on the desk. As a matter of fact, most of the things in your office aren't on your desktop, are they? No, they're filed away somewhere in the drawers and cabinets and things. So all of this stuff on the desktop is not everything that's on your computer. This is just the stuff that's been put there for convenience. The other stuff, everything on your computer can be gotten to down here in the bottom row. There's a little manila folder looking thing. That's your File Manager. That's where you can get to everything in there. This little thing over here, this is the Windows logo. Clicking on that will get you to most of the programs on your computer. And now I see most. Not all of them are listed on there. There's a couple that are hidden. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute when we get down to there.
Okay.
So just because it's not sitting on the desktop doesn't mean it's not on your computer. Okay. And let's see what other kind of terminology I can talk about. Oh, hardware and software. I use the word programs. Programs are considered software. Now, hardware is the actual physical equipment. the keyboard, the monitor,
Hmm.
the piece parts, the actual physical equipment you can put your hands on, that's hardware.
Right.
Software are the games and internet and stuff that runs along on your computer that you can't actually see and touch. That's
Okay.
software. Programs are another word for software that does things like a game or something like that. So a lot of people will use the term program and software interchangeably. There is one very important software on your computer. It's called your operating system. The operating system is the software that runs your computer and that tells it how to run everything else on your computer. Now, the software, the operating system software, is Windows, is what we're talking about today. That's what Windows is. It's the operating system software that runs your computer and tells your computer how to run everything else you put on it.
Okay.
It's kind of like the general of the army. It gives the instructions and the orders for everything else. Now, there is a different operating system other than Windows that you might run into. There's several different ones, but what you might run into as a consumer is an operating system called Macintosh or Mac. Macintosh is a type of Apple. Macintosh operating systems run on Apple computers. Okay. So the two systems don't generally play well together. They're like generals in the army that speak different languages from different countries. If you put something that's intended for Windows on a Macintosh system, it won't know what to do with it. It doesn't speak the right language.
Right.
Yeah. So on the box, when you buy a game or something, on the box, it will say what operating system it's intended to go with. And you'll know which, and there's different versions of the operating system too. Every few years, they add more bells and whistles and they put out a new version. It's kind of like the new model of the car. You know, you'll have a 73 Malibu and then you'll have an 83 Malibu. They're different models. That's like the different versions of the software. And sometimes and you really want to get one that's close to what you're doing. If you have a computer that's fairly new and it's running Windows, it's depending on when you purchased it, it's either running Windows 7 or Windows 10 probably. Unfortunately, they weren't logical and they didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 version. No, that would be too easy. They went like 3 and then they were, let's see, for a while there, they were doing years. So there was 95 and a 98 and an ME for Millennium.
Oh,
yeah. And then it was Millennium.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then it was Windows Vista, I think, or was XP? XP or Vista was one of those in there. I just remember that because everybody hated Vista and nobody wanted to use it, so they eventually dropped it. And they have Windows 8, but nobody liked Windows 8 because it was mostly intended for touchscreens. And it didn't work quite right on computers that weren't touchscreens. And so a lot of people did Windows 7 and then they jumped up to Windows 10.
Okay.
I don't know what they did with Windows 9. Never heard anything about if they had a 9 or not. So it tends to skip sometimes and do weird things. The Mac versions tend to name their versions after like big cats. So you have snow leopard and things like that. I don't know. I don't know Mac computers. On your phone or your tablet, you might have a different operating system. If it's an Apple, if it's from the Apple company, it's or an iPhone or an iPad. Those run an operating system called iOS, which is iPad or iOS operating system. That's what it stands for. iPhone operating system. Other phones run an operating system called Android. So you have the two that work on phones and tablets. And a tablet is basically a small flat computer that doesn't have a keyboard. You know, it's not as powerful.
What is that called again?
It's called a tablet.
Tablet. Okay.
Yeah, this is a tablet. It's kind of halfway in between a phone and a computer.
Okay.
Yeah, you might see that. They don't have as much processing power and not as much memory space in them to store things, but they're very portable. They do Wi-Fi, and they're very good for reading and surfing the internet. I usually use it for internet, reading ebooks, and checking my email, and playing a few games.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's all a matter of what you're trying to do with your computer, which ones you got. Okay, so that's your operating system. Oh, nowadays, the software, I called it programs. The actual software that does stuff like games and internet and stuff. I call those programs because I'm old school, but nowadays they're calling them apps because that stands for applications. That's what they called programs that they put on people's phones, on their smartphones, and people just got used to saying app. You know, download the app for this and whatever. So now they're calling them apps on the PCs and computers too. So now I have to learn another jargony term and get rid of what I've learned before. It's always ever changing, ever changing.
Yeah, no.
Other terminology. This little rectangle thing, the hole this goes into, a port is a hole on your computer where you stick cables and things. So like a porthole on a ship. So that's called a port. The rectangle one that this goes in, it's called a USB port. I think it stands for like Uniform Serial Bus. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's called USB, the initials USB.
Okay.
And there's lots of things you can get that will plug in there, not just flash drive. If you have a laptop, you can actually, they don't usually come with a mouse. You know, this is a mouse. It controls the little pointer on your screen. Most laptops don't actually come with a mouse. They come with a little square thing in front of the keyboard where you put your finger down and touch it. And okay. Well, you can actually buy a mouse for those. You can get what they call a USB mouse that will plug into that same rectangular hole that this does. And it will just, you plug it in and you can immediately start using it. Just make sure it says USB. There's also other things you can get that plugs into the USB ports. You can get coffee mug warmers, little hot plates for your coffee mug that plugs in there, because it's a combination of power and information port. So a lot of things use that now. They used to be on the back of the computers, but now they're on the front because people found them so useful and started plugging lots of stuff into them. So that's what that little rectangular hole is called. It's called a USB port. Okay, other terminology. Oh, if you go to buy a computer, and the computer guy who's selling you stuff mentions the word peripherals, that means extra stuff that's added equipment. That means like printers and scanners. Now you probably know what a printer is. It prints out things from your computer. A scanner, if you don't know what a scanner is, it's like the top half of a copy machine. You know, it has the glass with the little light that goes across.
Yeah.
And you put your document face down, close the lid, push the button, and it scans it. And instead of instead of shooting out a piece of paper like a copy machine, it puts a copy on your computer. That's how people get their old photos into the computer. Is they have a scanner, and you can even buy ones that are combination of scanners and printers. They can actually act like a copy machine. Anything extra that's outside of the normal package is called a peripheral. So if you go to the computer guy and they say, and you buy a computer and they say, hey, what peripherals do you want? They mean, do you want a printer? Do you want a scanner? Do you want extra speakers that you can plug in? You can buy all sorts of extras. All that side piece parts, those are called peripherals.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I have a little rant about printers. When you go to buy a printer, there's two different kinds. There's inkjet and laser. Inkjet uses liquid ink and it just shoots it in onto the paper. Laser uses powdered toner, powdered like a copy machine does. And it's different color powders, and it's heat set. It runs through a heating drum inside the printer, and it sets the powder. It basically melts the powder into the paper. Oh. Now, you can get really good printers for pretty darn cheap. Really good quality. They'll spit out good prints for a pretty reasonable price. However, before you get taken in by the good prices on the printers, you need to check out how much the ink cartridges cost, or the powdered toner, whichever one you're looking at. Because the companies actually, a lot of them lose money on the cost of the printer. They make up the cost in the ink cartridges. Yeah. So if you buy, let's say you can buy a $50 printer. That's a good, decent printer. And you're like, oh, $50, I can afford that. Go over on the other side of the store on the ink wall with all the ink cartridges and find the ink cartridge. See how much the ink cartridge costs. Some of those ink cartridges can run upwards to $40. Yeah, which is almost the cost of the printer you just bought.
Right.
So it may be more cost effective in the long run if you're going to be doing a lot of printing. You know, if you're just going to print once in a while, maybe that's okay with you. But if you're going to be doing a decent amount of printing, it may be better off in the long run, may save you money if you pay a little bit more for the printer and a little bit less for the replacement ink cartridges.
Right.
Also, check and see whether or not the color ink cartridges are all together or separate. Because a lot of printers, inkjet printers, will have all three of the colors, which is red, yellow, and blue, but they call it magenta, yellow, and cyan, but it's red, yellow, and blue. They'll have all three colors in one cartridge, which is not a great idea, because if you run out of blue ink but not yellow or red,
yeah, gotta throw the whole thing out.
You're right. Yeah, gotta check the whole thing and get a new one. So it may also be better off in the long run, if you're going to be doing a lot of color printing,
right,
to invest in a printer that may be a little bit more expensive but has separate color cartridges,
right,
so that, you know, if you run out of blue, you just replace the blue.
Right.
Also, when they're all together in one cartridge, they usually don't hold as much ink. So the side effect of that, having separate cartridges for the different colors, is that usually the separate cartridges will actually hold more ink, so you won't run out as fast. Yeah. So
can I ask a question? Is the laser much cheaper than the inkjet?
The laser,
I mean, the cartridges.
powder cartridges are actually usually a little more expensive.
Really?
Yeah. but I believe they work out less cost per paper
Mm-hmm.
than they do for the ink cartridges.
Okay.
It also depends on which one how much you're going to be doing and how heavily you're going to be printing. Because if you're going to be printing like paper stuff like this, where most of the white paper is just showing,
Yeah.
inkjet is fine. But if you're going to be printing out a lot of, let's say, photos where the whole paper is covered with color,
Right.
it might be better on you to actually pay a little bit extra and get the laser jet with the powder toner, because the more ink you spray on a piece of paper, the wetter it gets and the more likely it is to wrinkle.
Right.
Which doesn't give you good quality photos to put in your photo album.
Okay.
Unless you get, that's why they make special photo paper. That one of the reasons is because it resists absorbing the liquid ink, and it's heavier, and it's got a kind of a coating so that it doesn't. Yeah.
So since the laser is powder, it doesn't have that problem, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you look at the printers, they should, in the technical specs, they should say something about cost per page, average cost per page. And it's usually hidden somewhere in there. So be sure and take all of that, do your research and take all of those items into effect, take it into consideration. That's the word I was trying to think of. Taking it into consideration, what you're going to use it for, how often you're going to use it, and the cost of the replacements.
Right.
Yeah. And whether or not you think you're going to be using it more in the future, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're both good. I mean, both kinds are good. You can find really good quality, decent printers in both inkjet and laser. It's just a matter of what works for your situation.
But in general, when you buy the component, there's no real price advantage. They're about the same. Like laser isn't much cheaper than the inkjet.
You know what? Honestly, I haven't actually priced them recently. We actually bought our laser. We have a laser jet. We actually bought ours used off of what's that website? Nextdoor. Somebody had a laser printer for sale that was only about a year old, and they had to move, and they didn't want to. Yeah. They didn't want to ship it. Oh, somebody else has also posted in the chat that if you don't use your inkjet printer very often and you let it set for long periods of time in between, the ink could dry out.
Yeah, I've actually had that experience. That's why I don't bother owning any of them. I usually will go to a house that does it.
Yeah.
And I find that it's cheaper to just do it when I need them, rather than have a laser and a printer, and I got to think about the inks and all this other stuff. So, anyway.
Yeah, if you're only going to do it once in a while, the library charges 50 cents a page for printing color, 10 cents a page for black and white.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You put whatever it is you need to put on the flash drive and bring it up. Right. Now, one thing you do have to think about is if you're going to put something on here and take it to another computer to print it out, Whatever program you use to put it on here to create that file, the other computer you're taking it to print is going to have some kind of program on there that can open that kind of file.
Right.
So if you have a specialty software that does this great thing and you try and save it on here, if you save it in a format, a style that only that great software can read, and we don't have that great software, we can't open it and print it out.
Right. Right.
So always be careful about that too. The different programs can sometimes save things in their own specialized formats that other
Right.
programs can't read.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty, now we're going to get on to common things on the desktop. I'm looking at my handouts. Oh, actually, I want to talk about the mouse first before we get on to sharing the desktop. Now, I can't normally in the classes, I would actually demonstrate using the mouse for beginners and practicing them, but I'm just going to have to hold it up and talk about it. So this is called a mouse. It's no big technical reason why this is called a mouse. The people that invented it just saw the little tail and thought it looked like one.
Right.
So, which is really weird because the original one was a square box. And it had a little like curly wire coming out of it. And they're like, hey, it looks like a mouse tail. Even though it was
then they started looking
box.
like them.
Yeah.
And then they actually, the shape of a mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they started getting them like conformed to the hand, and they actually started looking like a mouse, which is really funny because the name came before the shape.
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay. So the mouse it's hard to tell on this one because it's all one color, but it has two buttons, left and right. And the mouse is used to control the pointer on the screen, which I'm sure you guys, since you guys have used computers before, you know that this is used to control the pointer. But a couple of tips. First of all, normally they're set up to use the left button because most people are right-handed. So you put your two fingers on there. Now, as a beginner, do not grab at this because you can accidentally click those buttons without meaning to if you grab too hard. It's best off to keep your hand relaxed and just let your hand rest on it without grabbing at it. You generally want to move it. I tend to move it with this part, not with my fingers like this. I tend to rest my hand on it and just kind of move my arm back and forth. That keeps me from accidentally clicking on things if I'm grabbing it this way, if I just relax. Also, the farther back your fingers are from the edge, the harder it is to push the buttons. And the more likely you are to jerk your hand while you click. And if you have to click twice in a row, that double click, let's just click, click. If your hand's back here and you have to push too hard, it's going to slow down your clicking and you're more likely to jerk your hand. They're much easier to push up by the edge. So it's actually easiest if you rest your fingers on the edge of the buttons and let them drape over just a little bit. It's much easier to click the buttons and you can do it much faster.
You're right. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Because it's such small movements here, the least little hand trimmer can affect it. And if you push, it's very difficult to learn. I mean, you have to learn how to push one finger without moving anything on the rest of your hand. It's like a muscle memory you have to get into. But it's much easier if your fingers are up near the edge. Now, this one happens to have a little roller ball in here, which if you have what we call a scroll bar that lets you scroll up and down the screen, this can take the place of a scroll bar if you have one of these.
Okay.
Now, on the other side, this has a little red light. This, the kind that has a little red light, that's the standard nowadays. This is called an optical mouse. The little red light hits the table, bounces back, and the angle it bounces at can tell the computer how to move the arrow. It tells you how you're moving the mouse. So these have trouble on glass tabletops because the light can't bounce.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Or weird roughed surfaced tabletops. It may have trouble. The mouse might, or the arrow might start jerking around like this, because on a rough surface, the angle it bounces back at is a little weird, and it goes like this as it moves across the rough surface. So it can't really count on the angle, and it doesn't know what to do with it. So if one of those two things happens, all you have to do is take a piece of paper and put it underneath there. Just give it a smooth, opaque surface to bounce that light off of.
Okay.
That's all you need.
That's good.
If you have an old style mouse, it might have a little rubber ball in there. That little rubber ball would actually touch the table and grip it. And how that rubber ball moved would tell the computer how to move the little arrow on the screen.
Okay.
Which means that little rubber ball had trouble on slick surfaces, glass, stainless steel, marble countertops. So that's why we used to have something called mouse pads. They were basically just little rubber pieces just to give the mouse something to grip onto. We don't use those anymore also because the little rubber ball actually touched the table and rolled up inside, it would collect dust and bring that dust up inside the mouse. So if you're working with an old style mouse, you may actually have to take that little rubber ball out and clean up inside of it with a Q-tip once in a while. Alrighty, now I'm going to go on to the stuff on the screen and how to change your settings, because, and then this is affects the mouse use. If you're left-handed, you do not want to use this the way it is, because you have to use it left-handed and you have to click with this finger.
Yeah.
And anybody that's left-handed is going to have problems because you can't click as fast with that finger. You can actually, on your own computer, you can actually flip those buttons in the settings. You can also, if you have something like Parkinson's or arthritis and you cannot do that double clicking thing really quickly, you can slow down how fast you have to click. You can also slow down how fast it moves the arrow on the screen to go to your personal settings. Now, for anybody, I know somebody was in the last week we had computer basics, like what are all those funny keys? And one thing I did say in that instance was when you have to open up a program, you usually, if it's on the desktop, you usually double click on it, which means you put the arrow on top of it and you click twice, tap, tap. If you have trouble tapping that fast, you can actually replace the second click with hitting the enter key on your keyboard. So you can click.
Hitting what again? I'm sorry?
Hitting the enter key on your
Enter.
keyboard.
Okay.
You can actually click once and it will turn it blue or put a little box around it. And then you hit enter. And it takes the place of the second click if you have trouble getting that double click thing really quickly.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's very useful for people as we get older because, you know, we get I'm starting to get the osteoarthritis. And, you know, your fingers slow down how well you can control them. So, all right. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to talk about the things on the screen. This is called your desktop. And all the things up here are called icons. There are two words for little pictures. A little picture that starts up something else or goes to another place or does something is called an icon. That's the computer word for little picture that does something or goes somewhere. A thumbnail is just a miniature version of a larger picture. So you have two different words for little picture. So each one of these is an icon that starts something up. One thing I do want to show you is in the top left-hand corner, your recycle bin. They used to call this the trash can until, environmentally friendly, they decided to rename it. So this is where things go when you delete them off your computer. They do not, if you delete them off a flash drive, they do not go in there. If you delete them off a flash drive, be very careful because they don't go up in here. But if they're actually stored and saved on your computer and you delete them, they actually throw them up here first. They don't actually just erase them. And if you start that up, I'm going to double click on that. Tap, tap. Okay, I'm going to get this here and blow this up. These are all the things that I have deleted off my computer. If I decide, oh, I want this one back, I can click on it and there's a button up here that says restore the selected items. That will put the item back, whatever I chose, that will put it back where I deleted it from.
Okay.
So if you accidentally delete something off your computer and you're like, oh, crud, I didn't mean to hit delete on that. The good possibility it might be up here in this recycle bin, if you can find it. There is also a button that says empty recycle bin. If you do that, it's like the janitor coming and emptying your trash can in your office. It gets bundled up and thrown away. And it's not necessarily gone, but if you want to get it back, if you throw a file in your trash can and then the janitor comes and empties the trash, if you need to get it back, you can go dumpster diving. And if it's right on top and you've done it, it's been thrown away recently, and if it didn't get garbage thrown on top of it, you might be able to find it and get it back. Same exact thing with computers. If you delete it, that's like throwing it in the trash can. If you delete it off of your computer. This is the trash can. Well, it's called the recycle bin, but it's basically the same thing. If you click empty the recycle bin, that's like the janitor coming and taking out your trash. If then you decide that you absolutely have got to have that thing back, if you just did it, and if you take it to the professional right away and tell them what it is, what it was called, they can do the computer equivalent of dumpster diving and maybe find it. If something else, if garbage hasn't been piled on top of it already. Because when you delete and empty the recycle bin, it actually doesn't erase it off the hard drive. It basically just tells the computer to forget where it was. And then the next thing you save, it might pile it in that space. That's like throwing garbage on top of it. In that case, you won't be able to get it back.
Okay.
Which means if you're giving away your computer or selling it, it's not enough just to erase everything, all your personal information off of it. Go buy yourself a program that writes, I think they're called disk overwriters, I think. It basically is a program that once you delete everything that it's personal off your computer, it goes through and it fills it up with several layers of garbage and then erases that so that nothing can be retrieved. That's the safe way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about up here in the top right-hand corner. You will see a line, some boxes, and an X. In most things on Windows, you will see these items. These are X is to stop this program. Whenever you see an X in the corner of something, it means shut down whatever this is in the corner of. So when I'm done with this program, I'll click the X and it will shut it down. If I want to hide it, but I don't want to shut it down, that's the little line. This is called your minimize button. And if you click that, what happens is it shrinks it down, boom. But it didn't close it. It's still running in the background. So how you get it back is down here. On this bottom part along the bottom of your screen, this long skinny black part, this is called your task bar, T-A-S-K. Because when your computer has a program running, they call that a task. A program that's running is called a task. And it puts the programs that are running down here. And anything long and skinny in computer terms is a bar. So this is your task bar. So whenever you have something running, you will see a little icon, a little picture. And the latest version of Windows has a little line under them to show that these are running. And if you move your arrow across it, you will get a little preview. And if you click on it, boom, it comes back. So you can actually shut this, and you'll notice I have 3 things running. This is my Zoom controls, I have my internet, and I have this file manager, which is on the recycle bin folder. And if I want to do something else, I can shrink that down, I can do something else, I can shrink that down, do something else. I can have so many different ones open down here. But you shouldn't have too many programs running at the same time. Because what happens if you try to do 10 things at once? Nothing gets done, does it? No. So if you've got 10 different programs all running down here at the bottom, shut some of them down. Your computer's probably running a little too slow because it's trying to do 10,000 things at once. So that's my little rant on that subject. So that's the close, and then this is the minimize. The one in the middle has a kind of a stupid name. It's called restore down. It makes it half size. By the way, this box here, this is called a window. That's why the operating system is called Windows, because it works in all of these little windows here. If you click at this box again, it will go back up. Now, when it's half size like this, you can move these around by grabbing any of the empty space at the top. If you click and hold the mouse button down, and you keep holding it while you move it, that's called dragging. And when you let go, it stays where you put it. And you can do that with any of these half-size windows. Whenever the windows don't take up the full screen, you can drag them around so that you can have 2 on the same screen. And you can flip back and forth between them by just clicking on the empty spaces at the top. And whichever one you click on will come to the front.
Okay.
You can also flip back and forth between them by clicking on here at the bottom where their little icons are. And that will flip back and forth between them.
Okay.
If you want to practice with the mouse and you want to get really good at this, and you want these to be different sizes, like this is a little too big for me, you can actually move your arrow onto the edge, and if you're careful, Watch what happens when I'm on the edge. See, my arrow turns into a double-headed arrow when I'm on the side. I can click right then, drag it, and I can resize this thing. That works for all the edges. Now that takes a little practice with the mouse because it's a very teeny tiny line that you have to click on. But it can be done. Okay, I'm going to shrink this one down. One other thing you'll see a lot is you'll see scroll bars. Those are over here on the right-hand side of any section. This one has two. It has a scroll bar for this part here, over here, and it has a scroll bar for this part over here. It even has a scroll bar along the bottom because the information is too big to fit in the screen sideways. How these work is a couple of different ways. One, it has a little arrow at the top and bottom. If you click that, it goes up a little bit. Click the down arrow, it goes down a little bit. One click is a small movement. If you click, if I click and hold the button, it will scroll up until I let go. So click and holding, I'm going to try this one down here because it's got more room to scroll. So if I click and hold my button down, it just keeps going until it hits the end. So these little arrows are small movements, unless you hold it down. Anytime you hold the button down or something on the computer, like on the keyboard, it will repeat. So yeah, be careful about that. You will also notice this little gray part. It's kind of like a solid piece in a little slider, a sliding slot. So it's sliding up and down this part. So I can actually click in the white space above it, and it will jump up bigger movements. So that's a second way to use the scroll bar. If I like that dragging thing I just talked about, where you hold the button down and pull the mouse, you can actually click on the gray part, hold the button down, and just pull it up and down with the mouse while you're holding the button down. That's 3 different ways to use the scroll bar. It doesn't matter which one you use. Also, if you have a roller ball on your mouse, I can actually use the roller ball and operate that scroll bar without even being over near it. So that's 4 ways. Whichever one you feel comfortable doing is perfectly fine. They all work. It's just a matter of which one works best for you, which can be said for a lot of things on the computer. Okay. Now I'm going to close this by clicking the X in the corner. And now it's not underlined anymore, so it's not running in the background. Okay, one thing I do want to show you, or one more thing, is down here in the bottom left-hand corner. This is the Windows logo. And they call this the Start button. You may also have a button key on your keyboard that has this symbol on it. It's usually in the bottom row. That's the same thing. If I click on this, it brings up what we call the Start menu, which these are the programs, list of programs. And if you're running a later version of Windows, you may have this part, which is where you can pin things to it, make little shortcuts to some of your programs here. If you want something pinned over here, it only takes, so that way you don't have to, let's say I'm looking for a particular program that's all the way down at the bottom. I can scroll to get down to the bottom and then start it up, right? But if I use that all the time, maybe I want this Skype. Maybe I want Skype over here. And I don't want to scroll down every single time. how I get something over here is I right click on it. What that means is I move my arrow over it, and instead of using the left button, I use the right mouse button. The right mouse button will bring up a list of options that you can do with whatever you've clicked on. In this case, one of these options is pin to start. Pin means to keep it in place. To bring up this menu, you have to use the right button. But when you choose something on the menu, you have to use the left button again. So if I click pin to start with the left mouse button, it puts it over here.
Oh.
So now, whenever I close that and open it back up again, there it is, and I don't have to scroll all the way down my list for it. So that's what I want to put. I want to put stuff over here that I'm going to be using frequently, that I don't want to scroll down for. To get rid of it off of here, because when you first get a computer that has Windows 10, and I think they used to do this with Windows 7 too, it came with a bunch of stuff over here, like games and things that I had no intention of ever playing. To get rid of things over here, you right click on this and you choose unpin, and it will get rid of it over here. Now, this doesn't affect anything on the list. Whatever you do over here, it's still going to be on this list over here. You don't have to worry about that. It doesn't like delete it if you take it off of here. The reason I'm telling you this is because there's a couple of things that you may want to use. You notice I have Calculator and Wordpad over here. There's a couple of programs that are on computers with Windows that are not listed on this list because they try and phase them out and they don't want people using them, because they want to steer you toward the newer model or the expensive model. Your computer will come with a program called Wordpad. It's a little typing program, but it's not on the list. Wordpad is not on the list. It's a free program you can type things up in. They want you to use Word. They want you to buy the expensive version, so they don't tell you it's there. And in my case, let's see. Yeah, there's also another program over here that I use all the time that's not here, which is called Snipping Tool, which I can put over here if I want. But I usually get to it if you click here to bring that up, and you just start typing. You don't click on anything, you just start typing, and you type Wordpad. It will come up. There it is, even though it wasn't on the list.
You just taught me something that I've been trying to get working for a while.
Yeah.
And I keep coming across, buy, and I'm like, no, I don't want to buy.
Yeah.
So
and see, yeah, this is what it looks like. It's a very, very stripped down version of Word. Very stripped down.
I want to see if I can get it like right now. I'm curious.
Yeah, so just click on that logo, type Wordpad, and then you can right click on this one and choose pin to start.
Yeah. How do I get out of this screen? Let's see. Oh, okay. Exit full screen.
Yeah.
Click
that.
Oh, okay. I think I know now. All right.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Click this. Type
Wordpad. Now I click on the logo. I don't have a place to type.
Yeah, no, see, oh yeah, you click on that. Look, I don't have a place to type either.
Oh yeah, you're right. It does.
It doesn't matter.
Type.
Just start typing.
Oh my God, I see it. Wordpad.
That's a search. You may not, if some people have a little box there down there to search, but some people don't. If you click on that and just start typing, what it does is it first will try and search your computer for whatever you're typing. If that doesn't work, and if you're connected to the internet, it will actually take you to an internet search.
Yeah, it came right up. Beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, wow. You just saved me a lot of questions because I've been trying to
Yeah.
use WordPad and I didn't know how to find it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another thing
That's
that they
great.
don't have on there is they have a new internet program called Microsoft Edge.
Yeah, I know that one. Right.
But
Go ahead.
if you want the old one, Internet Explorer, it's not on this list because they want you to use the new one.
Right.
If you click that and type Internet, whoops, bring it up, Internet Explorer, there it is, and you can pin it to your start button or your start menu. And you can still use the old browser, even though they don't tell you it's there.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, so there's a couple of programs on your computer that they don't put on that list. And the reason they're still there is because people still want to use them, but they just don't want to make it easy for you because they want you to use the new thing or the expensive thing. By the way, if you want a more robust version of a typing program, a word processing program is what we call it. If Wordpad doesn't have enough features for you, you can download a program or a series of set of programs from a place called openoffice.org. It's basic.
Now, I think you have to pay
No,
for
it's
that
free.
or not?
No, that's free.
Oh, okay.
It's a free set of programs that work like Microsoft Office.
Okay.
They have the word processing program. They have the slideshow program. They have the spreadsheet program like Excel. Yeah. And it's called, and it's a reliable set of programs.
Great. Thank you.
Openoffice.org. Yeah. You just tell it, you just pick which operating system you've got and download it, and it will install on your computer.
Beautiful.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to show you is while we've got this pulled up here, there's the power symbol. The same symbol that should be on the button you use to turn your computer on. This is where you should turn your computer off. This is the button you click and choose shut down to turn your computer off. That is the proper way to shut down your computer.
Okay.
It has sleep, which basically, I mean, it puts it to sleep, uses low power, but it doesn't lose anything. Shut down will shut it down, restart, shuts it down, and starts it back up again. It's pretty obvious what those three are.
Right.
That's where you should shut down your computer. Other things you've got here are, this is where you can switch if you're using a computer at work and you have to share computers and you have to log out and log back in under different names. This is where you do it. Okay. At home, you probably won't use that because you don't have different passwords and things set up for different people on one computer at home, usually. This symbol here is the exact same thing as this one down here at the bottom. It's just an outline version. So you can get to the files from either of those two. Okay. And that's what we're going to be learning to use in on Friday's class. Okay. The one thing that you really might want to go through is this little gear symbol. Whenever you see a gear symbol, that means the settings. In this case, it's the settings for your computer. So if you click on that, it will take you to all the ways you can customize and set up your computer. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I'm going to just kind of point to each one and say what you can do in here. Okay. A couple of things. So in their system, it says display, notifications, power. This is where you can set it up. Let's say my laptop was set up to turn off if I didn't touch the keys in like 2 minutes. That's not enough time for me. I need like 10 minutes. So under power settings, I opened this up, I went to power settings, and I changed that to 15 minutes. If you're not sure which one of these things it's under, up here in this box, you can click in this box and type what you're looking for to try and change, and it will find the settings, the place where it is for you, even if you don't know which one of these categories it's under. Devices. This, see where it says mouse? That's where you can change the mouse settings, like I was saying before. Here under mouse, if I click that, it takes me to the all the different devices. This is where I can see what printers and scanners I have attached. There's a couple other things that I don't usually play around with most, but the mouse, here's where you can switch it from left to right. So when you're right-handed, you're actually clicking the left button, but if you're left-handed, you'll be clicking the right button with your. I
thought I saw in the stores actual mouse that are made for the left hand. Am I right or am I wrong?
Generally speaking, unless the mouse is shaped differently, like it's shaped in a particular angle to fit your hand a certain way. Like my husband uses something called a trackball, where he rests his hands on and he rolls a little roller ball with his thumb.
Right.
That is left and right-handed specialized because it's the way your hand rests on it. But a regular mouse, the buttons, doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's just here's where you do it. Yeah. Only if it's a special like curve to fit ergonomically. And here's additional mouse options. This is where you can slow it down. See, here's the double click speed I was talking about. You can slow it down so that you don't have to double click as fast if you have arthritis or something. Pointer options is how fast it goes. If your little arrow goes too fast for you to see, slow it down. I'm done with this, so I'm going to go back. Anytime you see an arrow pointing backwards in the top left-hand corner, that means go back to where you were before.
Okay.
Other things here, I don't have any reason to link my phone. This is where you can, this is not such a big deal here on your home computer, but if you have, let's say, a laptop and you want to take it someplace and use their Wi-Fi, this is where you could set it up and connect to the network. If it's not down here, sometimes in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see symbols of various things you can do, like this little thing down here in the corner. This is the speaker where I can raise and lower the volume.
Right.
If it's not down here, the Wi-Fi is not down there, this is how you get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Personalization.
Yeah, mine's on the bottom.
Okay. See, some of them are, some of them aren't. But just in case it's not, you can get to it from the settings up here. Personalization. This is how because see, I have a tendency to change this background. This is called my wallpaper on my desktop. Under personalization, you can choose different colors. You can actually choose to have it go through the photos that are on your.
Oh man, I made a huge mistake. I did that. I changed the color. And then all of a sudden, all my screens were like black to the point where the printing wasn't visible.
Yeah.
And I tried to go back and change it, and it wouldn't change it. And then just reset. I mean, I would get a whole, I couldn't see the type. The type was like the same as the background or something.
Yeah.
It was black and on black. So anyway, just by luck, the other day, I just had, after months, by luck, I came across, where I could change it, and I finally got everything back to the way it was. And I think it might have been this page right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Be very careful if you change it to a solid color. To change it to a color that your lettering will show up on.
Yeah, well, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Months before I found the way.
Yeah, it will. And if you choose picture, this down here, choose fit, that's how the picture looks. Colors and themes will actually apply various, it will actually change the color of the lettering and stuff too, and the sounds.
Yeah, I'm never touching that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually use it just to change it to a picture. I change it to picture, and then here under browse, whenever you see browse, it will open up that same kind of window we saw before, and you can tell it where to put. Yeah, I actually have a folder called wallpaper in my pictures where I save all that stuff. And that's another thing we're going to go over more in Friday's class, files and folders. Okay, so I'm going to go back. If you need to uninstall or remove a program, here's where it is. If you do that, it will give you a list of all the programs on your computer and let you choose one and choose to uninstall it. Now, if you don't know what that program is, it's best not to uninstall it, because it may be one of those ones that's supposed to run in the background and work with other things. Yeah. Accounts, it's just what it says. You can set up your accounts, sync up your accounts with each other, that kind of thing. Time and language. This is one you might want to change if you, let's say, move to California. Right now, my time, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, is in Central Standard Time. I can change it to Mountain Time, Eastern Time, whatever. Here's Pacific Time. They're US and Canada. That's California. I can also do that by down here. A lot of computers will have down here at the bottom that says change the time or date. If you click on the date. So some of them you can get to from there. Gaming, I've never used that because I'm not a gamer.
Neither am I.
Yeah. Ease of access. This is one for people who have disabilities.
Oh.
Narrator will actually read the screen if you're visually impaired.
Oh.
You can turn it on and choose a voice, male or female. They have a couple different options available.
Wow.
And I've not used it, but I've heard that it actually works well. Magnifier. If you turn this on, what happens is it actually blows it really well up. And yeah.
I see that.
And you have to use the minus sign to go back to normal. So it's if you are visually impaired, that can help. If you are also, you might have contrast issues. So let's say high contrast, this is what it would look like. Black backgrounds with really bright lettering.
Yeah.
If you have contrast issues, and you know it if you do, you can choose one of those color schemes. Yeah. Closed captions. These don't work perfectly. Closed captioning, automatic closed captioning doesn't work perfectly, but it's better than nothing.
Okay.
And yeah, so if you have any kind of disabilities or have trouble, that's where you would change that ease of access.
Okay.
Cortana, that's like the Windows version of Alexa.
Yeah, I know. You can talk and it'll do what you say, hopefully.
I do not have mine turned on. You do need a microphone to use it.
Right.
But if you have it turned on and you have the microphone turned on, you can actually say, Cortana, do this, or Cortana, search the internet for this, or and yeah. Privacy, location, camera. I would recommend you go through these things and check and see what you can turn off and on. It's always good to know what kind of privacy settings you have available.
Okay.
Yeah. Update and security. This is where whenever they fix a problem with Windows, they issue an update.
Right.
That's where you would automatically start it. Now, mine is set up to, so it says some settings are managed by my organization. Yeah, my IT department handles this. But you
mine automatically updates,
yeah.
which sometimes is actually it's okay, because after it updates, it puts up the whatever I had up before the update, so it doesn't close out all the programs and start from scratch.
Yeah.
It actually restores where I left off. So that I just have it like that automatically.
Yeah, most people have it set. Most people have it set automatically. But if you're doing something time sensitive or particularly sensitive and you absolutely do not want to have it update on you, you can actually turn that off and only do it manually when you tell it to do it.
Okay.
So that's your settings. So I'm going to just go ahead and click X. Most of those I've never had to touch.
Okay.
Actually, this is about the end of it because it's about 10 till 3. And I was just going to ask if anybody had any questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And the fact that I got the Wordpad information really is valuable.
Yeah, and I always say that no class is wasted if you learn at least one new thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and a very important thing.
Yeah.
Because I use Wordpad for opening like documents, and I didn't want to pay for it, and I couldn't find Wordpad. So I had to deal with Apache, I think. And every time I wanted to open up a document, I had to download the whole program.
Yeah, if it's not, like I said, robust enough for you, if it doesn't do everything you want it to do, look into downloading OpenOffice. It's free and it's good, and it works almost exactly like Word, like the full version of Word. Okay. Well, if that's nothing else.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it. Maybe you'll see me at the next meeting. I'm not sure yet. I have to look at the schedule, but it was really enjoyable. And thank you very much.
Yeah, the next class is Friday at 10 a.m.
At 10 in the morning. Okay. All right, great. You have a great evening there. Thanks again for everything.
You too. And thank you both for coming. Thanks, both of you. Bye.